The Banking Scene Director's Cut goes behind the scenes, sharing stories and insights to help you build the bank of tomorrow.
So, Mr. Skinner, welcome to the Banking Scene Director's Cut. It's been a while since FinTech Uncut days when we used to do this more regularly, and I've missed your insights and your cheery disposition. So let's hope that we're going to be able to capture some of that today while you are sitting in the misty clouds, it looks like, from your camera angle.
I always have my head in the clouds.
This is true. What a way to start it off. So you've had a chance to have a look at my blog, which was mainly inspired by me seeing or provoked, should I say, by me seeing Monzo's announcement of their latest foray, potentially, about issuing eSIMs to their customers. And in my blog, I had linked to the article that I had seen first, which was talking about revenue diversification. I thought, revenue diversification, is this really going to add to their bottom line? I mean, there's been a number of banks that have issued eSIMs and brought a service like this out for their customers. Has it really added to their bottom line? Take Revolut, for example.
Well, I'll take a step back.
What's your thoughts on that?
Take a step back first.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Vorster, you've been drinking the Kool-Aid. And when I read your article, blog, the bit that really hit me and made me sit up was that you say through the banking scene that you've seen this dynamic change and shift, that banks are no longer fearing fintechs and neobanks and digital transformation because now they're reacting in months instead of years. And I think that's complete tosh. And you may have heard that, but that's drinking the Kool-Aid, because a lot of banks give those presentations, but in reality, they're nowhere near the level of service you get from the neobanks and fintechs. And I'll give you a specific example, because I've just been through this with a traditional old bank, and I won't name them, but you'll probably work out who they are when I tell you the story. And the story is this, that I needed to get
Is it a UK bank?
It is a UK bank. I needed to get a bank statement from my accountant for my business VAT return. And on the app, it wouldn't allow me to access statements. And online, I couldn't access the bank through their online portal using mobile PIN entry. And I was abroad. So I waited till I came back thinking that it would rectify itself. It didn't. So I then went through several cycles of entering lots and lots of numbers and verifiers and PINs and you name it, and still getting no access to get a simple bank statement download to send to my accountant. And I ended up having to ring the bank, waiting 18 minutes to get through to a human. And the human said, "Oh, something's wrong with your app. I've pressed the button. Try it now." And you think banks are keeping up? Complete rubbish. You're drinking the Kool-Aid.
I do know exactly the bank that you're talking about. They're the one that I divorced spectacularly last year. I didn't have the same experience as you, and I won't bring technological competency into the equation at all.
Mine or theirs?
Reasons.
No, it's theirs. I'm telling you, it's theirs. They had to reset my app.
So my reason for divorcing them wasn't a gap. For many years, right? I've got a 3-digit Monzo user number, which means I was one of the first couple of hundred, and it started the one. I think I'm 132 or something. So I'm a Monzo earlier.
Oh, I was just going to access your account. Hold on a second. 132, very useful.
No, 132 is my user number, not the account number, you see. So right from the beginning, I've been comparing, using Monzo as a benchmark against that particular bank that you're referring to. And at the end of the day, my divorce with the bank wasn't anything to do with technological capabilities. As you know, unlike you, I was able to download my statements and use their app and use whatever facilities they had. And there really was no difference between Monzo and that particular big bank from an app perspective. From an offering perspective, there was. My reason for moving from them was that most simple banking principle ever. That big bank didn't pay me enough interest on my savings account. As a matter of fact, they paid me almost no interest on my savings account. And Monzo were giving me at the time a healthy 4.5%. So I just closed everything and moved over, not because of a technological frustration, but to get to your point about the Kool-Aid. Don't forget, we are talking specifically about our experiences of the banking scene in the Benelux region. And we honestly do believe that there's been a massive shift across the Benelux region in the capabilities and also in the way that they've been approaching things. I mean, if you look at the big banks there, whether it's KBC and Belfius and others, they can compare pretty much blow by blow with all of the other banks, the neobanks, the new entrants, the fintechs, and that kind of a thing. And we honestly do, we're pouring the Kool-Aid, shall we say. We honestly believe there has been a big shift, and their current transformations are no longer centered around the fear of fintechs chomping at their heels or anything like that. There's been a cultural shift. There's been operational shifts. Sure, they've still got legacy issues.
Yeah, but let's just drill down on this a little bit, because I was interested in your comment about KBC on the blog, and Rick continually telling you that he can do all these non-banking things in their app. And I'm kind of looking at Revolut very closely at the moment because they just got a $75 billion valuation, and I'm keeping up with all the things that they're doing to become what they call a super app. And like Monzo, bringing in eSIM, bringing in commercial and other services, trying to be like a Alibaba and China super app service. And this is why you reached out, I think, in terms of how do banks stay relevant? Well, is it to expand their footprint across all commercial services that you need, or is it to maintain the narrow focus on transactions and finance and payments that are the basics of banking? And we're seeing a multiple strategy in that space. So KBC and Revolut, I think, are moving into we want to be a broad footprint through partnering in the ecosystem of APIs and apps. Whereas the traditional bank, like the one I mentioned, is saying, we've got no idea, so we don't do any of that stuff.
And I think I agree with you when it comes to that specific bank, but I want to pick up which is a UK bank, by the way.
Yeah, I should also say, you say that specific bank, but it's actually the leading bank in Britain with technology compared to the other big banks in Britain, other than the neobanks and fintechs. So they would claim that they're the most innovative technological bank in Britain.
No chance. Very much no chance. But going back to the super app approach, and that was one of the things that one of the announcements was referring revenue diversification. Another of the announcements and blogs was the original one, actually, the FT one that's behind a paywall, quoted a Monzo representative talking about how their driver was because of customer demand. Customers say that mobile contracts are a pain point, so they're looking at doing mobile contracts the Monzo way. And I thought, are mobile contracts really a pain point for me? Are mobile contracts a pain point that I want my bank to solve? Yeah, it would be convenient if they did, particularly if they did it in the way that Revolut has. Because with Revolut, their eSIMs are primarily aimed at their people that travel extensively abroad and need global roaming packages and things like that. I would have found that very handy on my recent trip to Japan. But is mobile phones really something that I would have looked to Monzo specifically to solve a pain point problem? They really want to solve a pain point, solve my energy provider problem. That's an issue. But going back to the super apps, do you think the West has missed the boat? Is the West ever going to, you're talking about Revolut and KBC and others increasing their footprint. Are they ever going to reach anywhere near what Alipay and Financial has achieved? Because they epitomize relevance, as far as I'm concerned, by my definition of they're really relevant bank to those people that use the Alipay system. You've spoken about it extensively before. Do you think the West is fighting a losing battle, or do you think Revolut and others have a chance?
Well, there's like 5 or 6 points you just made in what you just said. So, I'll come back to the actual question at the end eventually, I guess, because what we're really talking about is where are banks going to be focused over the next decade, and in terms of moving into eSIMs, for example. It's extremely relevant for a company like Revolut because they view themselves as a travel bank. So that's the reason why, for example, I went through Munich Airport the other day and saw a massive advert on the gateway stand for Revolut, which used to be HSBC, the world's local bank. Now Revolut is the world's local bank. That's where they're going. And so for them, an eSIM makes absolute sense because it's for travelers. For Monzo, you've got to question what's that really for? Because as you say, I don't really have a problem with my mobile service provider if I'm not traveling. I mean, I've got a problem with mine because I travel. If you're not traveling, then why would I need an eSIM? And the answer is obviously to give you data enrichment, both for the customer and for the provider. And I think that's where Monzo's playing when they say it's the Monzo way, that effectively for the customer, you're going to get far more access to services on your mobile than you do from traditional telecom companies, and far cheaper than the contracts you currently pay for because it's inclusive in your account. And what it does for the provider, in the case of a financial service provider, is gives them far more knowledge of the customer's digital footprint, because you don't see the digital footprint of a customer if you don't have access to all their app services, if you only see what they're doing online. So it then gives them greater ability to bolster their fraud prevention and loss making areas by monitoring what people are doing on their mobile apps and services. And I've seen that with Alipay, going back to the mention of Alipay, because they've been doing this for almost a decade now, which is monitoring every single transaction on a mobile super app for fraud and risk. And they're now doing that with AI technologies inbuilt, and it's agentic and generative AI across the board. They're probably, I don't know because I haven't spoken to them recently, but I'd say they're working on their 6th or 7th generation of systems architecture to incorporate fully the artificial intelligence services that are available. And that's for a 22-year-old company. So you can see the difference I'm making between the traditional UK bank or Belgian bank and a true fintech, in that they regenerate themselves every 3 or 4 years in Alipay. And that's fantastic. I mean, it's the reason why they have the Ant Group Technologies business that's gone across all of Asia and a lot of India and other markets. Could and will banks be able to generate that level of service and analytics and data capture and 360-degree view of the customer that the Ant Group or the Revolut are trying to deliver through being a super app. Absolutely not. Not without starting afresh and rebooting the company.
I tend to agree with you there that I honestly don't believe we will see a super app style service emerging from Western banks.
Now, it could be
We
done
may
though.
have a complete outlier that comes in.
But it could be done through apps and APIs and the ecosystem. It's possible, but the problem is the back end of most banks is still actually in the 1970s. And if you don't get the back end right, you can't deliver the front end.
Yeah. And that was a particular point in your blog that I had when I read your blog about the Monzo announcement and eSIMs and those that have done it before. Your point about it being possibly used as a foundation to reduce fraud. That's when I thought, yes, I think Chris has got the right angle that he's coming from. It's not about revenue diversification. It's not going to add that much. I don't know how much they're expecting it to add to the bottom line. I did notice that it wasn't called out as a separate revenue item in Revolut's latest annual report. They did mention 600,000 customers signed up for mobile plans in their first year of setting up their eSIM service, but they didn't say, and it added X to the bottom line. So I don't think it's a pure revenue. I don't think it's much of a revenue diversification play. I do think that there is a customer relevance play there that Monzo are trying to do in terms of the kind of a demographic that they have historically targeted. I don't fit into the standard demographic. I've got a little bit too much gray hair. I think they do target the more tech-savvy younger generations, which from a convenience perspective, I think that this will come out. But your point on fraud and fraud detection, APP scams are the biggest, contribute the biggest amount of fraud in the UK. And as you so rightly said, this could help them reduce that. Now that will be interesting to know if anybody at Monzo is actually coming at it from that angle. You haven't got any contacts in Monzo that we could speak to and get their viewpoint on that, would we? Or do you think they would even be willing to share that?
No comment, but I am having lunch with someone who's very senior there in the next few weeks. My comment would be that what I said before, we don't monitor the mobile digital footprint as financial institutions. It's very difficult to get access to that. And if you offer an eSIM, then you can have far broader analytics on mobile activities versus what you have today. And that will assist immensely in minimizing fraud and things like APP. The challenge, I think, if you look at it as a revenue generator, is it doesn't work. I used to work for NCR, the cash machine company, and they were acquired by AT&T, the telecoms company, American. And we had a regular argument over the way in which the two markets worked between the banking industry that NCR was focusing on with me versus the telecoms industry that was the higher level. And basically the argument was that the telecoms company wanted more minutes on the network because that's their revenue generator. The banking industry wanted more basis points differentiation because that's their revenue generator. And it was really interesting because then I have a good friend who I think you probably know, Roy Vella, who was with PayPal. If you don't,
Yes, yeah.
And he actually got heavily into this to generate mobile payment services in PayPal. And he found exactly that same issue and said, look, the two don't work because the culture mindset is completely different between the two industries. And I think that's where the eSIM thing is nothing about revenue generation, because banks don't understand minutes on the network and data on the network and what is the revenue model of the telco companies. It's got to be far more around how do we deal with basis points differentiation, maximization, and minimize losses, and maximize our risk capabilities so that we don't have fraud, we don't have losses.
Fantastic insights, Chris. And on that note, I'm going to go and pour some more Kool-Aid.
Keep drinking it.
Cheers.
Take care, mate.